Good morning, viewers. Good morning, viewers across the continent of Africa and in Europe. Good morning in Europe. Good morning in America, wherever you are. Thank you very much, all of you. I hope you spent your day, your night very properly and you are up. This is Punchline Africa Television, broadcasting from the Political Command Center in London. Thank you very much. Across the continents of Africa, Europe, Australia, Matanga Global Trends. In this show of Global Trends, we shall be looking at Somalia today. Our main topic is Somalia. What can we do? Is it fighting an enemy within? We shall bring out the successes, the misses, the hits. How far have we gone to fight the insurgents that has killed this nation since 1991? Is it time for us and for Africa and for African Union and the UN to decide which method, which way to go on Somalia? How long shall we plug in? How long shall we put in efforts? But efforts become fruitless every time we make a move. The insurgents have moved further and gone up. They have now come to urban areas to terrorize, to kill, to maim, and to destroy property. What can we do that can save this country, Somalia? Good morning. Back to you in the studios in Nairobi, in the Republic of Kenya. Thank you very much, Miriam Ogutu. And across the continent of Africa, we shall also have with panelists who will be joining us right from Mogadishu. Nazir will be coming from Mogadishu, and another correspondent from Dar es Salaam. We expect him on the line, and Harare will be on the line. We don't know how many other people will join, but if you want to join us, use our Zoom, which is in the blue colors that are on our flyer. Back to you, Nairobi, Kenya, Miriam, to speak, to tell us more about news. Good morning. Good afternoon. Is it? Good afternoon in Nairobi.
It's still morning
good
here.
Morning.
It's about 11:35 here in Doha. A very good morning to you and good morning to our viewers. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching us from today. Yes, indeed. I'll just take us through quickly the headlines and then we will continue with our topic of discussion this morning, because a lot is happening in Somalia, and so it's important that we're having this conversation this morning. The Star newspaper from Kenya: Ruto to quash Uhuru's KU order, a council quits. And the Standard newspaper: Ruto's big gamble in PS choices. That is what we have. And the Daily Nation: Ruto government takes final shape. There you go. It's all about our new president, President William Ruto, and how he has constituted his government. Doc, do I go through the African papers very quickly before you bring us the latest there from London?
Yes. Thank you very much, Miriam. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So we look at the Daily Monitor from Uganda. DR Congo turns heat on Uganda over M23. Look at that. And then the New Vision, also from Uganda: what Kenya deployment in Congo means. The Namibian from Namibia: Russia offers Namibia fuel. Interesting. The Guardian from Nigeria: Afinefere, I remain leader, says Adebanjo as Fasuranti returns. And the Nation, also from Nigeria: 2023 APC is unbeatable in Lagos, says Tinubu. And Newsday from Zimbabwe: MPs in near fist fight. The Daily News as well from Zimbabwe: worry Chamisa overhauls a CCC, starts with key youth structure ahead of 2023 elections. Sowetan from South Africa: face of a monster. And then Business Day: South Africa cannot afford any fiscal mistakes. I think that is a business newspaper from South Africa. So, Doc, that is what we have here from some of the newspapers from the continent.
Thank you very much. Let me run back to the papers from the British establishment, from UK, United Kingdom. We have quite a lot of interesting stories, Miriam, coming out of the United Kingdom on the newspapers. There is quite a lot of push on the question of of refugees and their presence in this place. And there is quite interesting scenario. Let's look at the papers. Let's begin with the Daily Telegraph. The Daily Telegraph said, bank set for biggest rate rise since Black Wednesday. You remember when the collapse of the pound, there has been no change of rates and the fluctuation of rates in the bank. But the Bank of England is set to raise, to put the rates up to compensate with what took place. And as we are on the platform also, we are joined by Saxon Vima from Harare, Zimbabwe. Good morning, Saxon in Zimbabwe.
Good morning, how are you, Doc?
Thank you very much. We are reading British news right from London.
Okay.
Now, the Daily Telegraph, Jones U-turn over Farrell as captain, and then we have the Guardian, Home Office abandoned Marston asylum seekers on London streets. The debate on the question of asylum seekers, Miriam and the panel, it has taken a new twist. And this new twist here now talks about how did the asylum seekers, not this time from Africa, but most of them from Europe, from Syria, from all places, Afghanistan, have ended up in the United Kingdom, passing through the English Channel. There is a war between the MPs, the Home Secretary, who herself is fighting for her life because she used a private email to discuss confidential material of the government secrets. The UN envoy wants UK not to unleash new hostility era on the refugees. The Metro, which is a paper given to everybody, that is our boy, the man himself. The Metro is a very good paper. It is a tabloid which writes and picks, is given free in the train in the morning. If you are going to work in the morning, if you want to receive our you can get it from the Metro. And two, the Mirror, the MP, the former Secretary for Health Secretary of Britain, Saxon, if you can mute your equipment.
Sorry.
Mute your phone, please. Okay. The Health Secretary has joined a group of celebrities who are doing a show which actually mimics the health conditions of corona. So he's got a problem here with people. Arab flavors strictly tumble. The Daily Express said Suera eyes up 3 more countries to send Suhera. Suhera is the new Australia or whatever Indian name as you call it. She's the new secretary for Home Affairs. And I don't know why my friend Pirit Patel from Uganda in Mbale was also a Home Secretary. Why are prime ministers keeping the British Indian nationals the post of Home Secretaries? I don't know what they want from. Why the people are asking. And then there is the question: join the campaign to make ex-clown do every trial, which is the former Minister of Health. That is so far the newspapers' headlines from London. Thank you very much, viewers across the continent of Africa. Those watching us, our topic today of the day, Matanga. If unless you have any comments, Miriam, on those newspaper headlines and something that you feel you should bring out say it now before we cross over. And any of you on the panel now who has any comment about the newspaper, whether in Africa, in Zimbabwe, I don't know what Mr. You said the Zimbabwe newspaper headlines talk about near feast with MPs. My friend Saxon, what is going on in the Zimbabwe parliament?
And CCC is restructuring, it appears, the opposition party.
The Zimbabwe parliament, the newspaper from Zimbabwe is telling us that MPs almost gave each other blows. Who are these MPs? I hope they are not ZANU-PF.
It's across the divide. Normally this happens in parliament. People get emotional. And if this has become personal, I think we've had an incident where like Themba Mliswa threatened beat up one of MP because they had personal issues. Well, these are individuals who have got their differences. And it's not a very big issue. It's just in a teacup. We know that these are adults whose emotions boil over. So it's not nothing to worry about. And these are just personal issues. People with personal issues, they have vendettas that they are just meeting out in the public. Nothing to write home about.
Why is it that it is Themba Mliswa all the time with controversy? Can you tell us something that we don't know from Zimbabwe, please?
Themba is involved in a lot of issues. Themba, actually, in actual fact, he seized companies from another white guy called Paul Westwood. So whenever Themba, we call him a double-headed snake. At one time, he supposed the government. At another time, he criticized. He's someone who's mentally not stable. He once dated Susan Mutami, and once things went overboard, the issue was blown out of proportion, and they're both cycles, Themba and Susan Mutami. So Themba is not someone with a good mental disposition that you can rely on to handle national issues. That's why he was expelled from the ZANU-PF ruling party, where he was the chairperson of the Mashonaland in the West. Now he's using his sister, who is now the resident minister. So Themba is, you have to treat him with a pinch of salt. He's someone who cannot be trusted.
If he's using his sister, before we go to why is it that the government does not tame him and tame Mr. Themba to allow, because it looks like every scandal that comes out in Zimbabwe, Mr. Themba is involved. There's no scandal that is not involved. It's the one on Twitter, it's the one on Facebook, is the one demonizing President Emmerson Mnangagwa. He claims to be friendly to him. What is wrong with him? Is he worth a member of parliament? What type of example does he give to the people, to the younger generation? Isn't it time for people to take a decision? Because it looks like, have we forgotten profit diplomacy? I am asking a question. Have we forgotten profit diplomacy? Africans, do we have profit diplomacy anywhere? Go ahead.
Okay. But the Themba, people that same say, why should we fight with, like fighting with them? If you're not careful, it will make you dirty. Or if you are chasing a mad person, let's say you're batting, a mad person takes your clothes. If you run after him, what will people think of you? Who will be the mad person of the two? So at times they said, let's wait. Elections are coming 2023. There's no way Themba is going to be re-elected in Norton. So it's you get rather focus on other key issues like bread and butter issues. Focus on lost souls like Themba. It's a mere waste of time. You're chasing a wind, which you never catch. So people they say, no, let's just wait for elections. You won't be re-elected in Norton. So good riddance, bad rubbish. So at times people they say, let's just ignore him. He's not worth the salt, worth the effort. We cannot. We rather focus on nation building efforts rather than Themba, who is confused, delusional. Yeah.
When you say is confused, we don't know, but let's leave it there because we want to jump on our topic of the day, which we seem to have got quite a lot of interesting situations coming in here. And let's talk about the topic of the day, Somalia. Ladies and gentlemen on the panel and those watching us across the continent of Africa, Somalia has been under the spell of war since 1991 when the government of Siad Barre was overthrown and the country fell to chaos. It split into groups, clans took over power. From 1991 to date, Somalia has never seen peace. Bombs have come to cut people to size. People have died. Thousands and thousands of people perished. Refugees went across the whole universe. Every part of the world, you find 2 Somalis, 1 Somali, 20 Somali, 250, 100, 2,000. Many of them split, scattered all over the world. A country that was once united in Africa, a country that was once prosperous, a country that was exporting its goods up to Africa, a country whose currency was very strong, was reduced to rubble. Today, as we speak, this country continues to have quite a lot of difficulties. They are coming from Al-Shabaab, a group that was coined out of the removal of Islamic courts by the Ethiopians and the other groups that came in to rescue this country. The removal of Islamic courts, the only government in Somalia that tended to bring peace, headed by Sharif Ahmed Sharif, that was going to bring peace in Somalia, left a vacuum. And therefore that vacuum was occupied by Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, that was coming all the way from Afghanistan and other areas and Iraq, and they all crowded in a place where there was a vacuum. Today, as we speak, thousands and thousands of people have all the marks of Al-Shabaab killing in East Africa, in Uganda, in Kenya. Many of our people have died, perished as a result of the bomb attacks and suicide bombers who have come across and walked all the way from Somalia to bomb places and neighboring countries. As a result of that, the United States of America decided to put them on a proscribed list, put sanctions, penalties on them, that never should you deal with them, but you deal with them at your own risk. They have been proscribed as terrorists and a terrorist group as it stands today. The tides have changed. The new presidency, the old presidency looked like it had no the actual way, a serious way to fight Al-Shabaab. But the new president who came in power some months ago decided that he is going to take these guys head on and he will fight. Those who want to come to talk to him are welcome, but he decided that he was going to fight them head on. That policy seemed to have changed the tactics of Al-Shabaab. And Al-Shabaab, who are being fought by the natives in rural area, in northeastern part of Somalia. The natives have taken up arms. The groups have formed themselves. They are also now tackling Al-Shabaab one-on-one, and which is a very positive measure. And that has forced Al-Shabaab itself to withdraw and change tactics and come back on the capital city, Mogadishu, which they keep on bombing, killing hundreds and hundreds of people. As people die in Mogadishu, the world does not mourn. The blood is missing. We haven't seen condemnation coming from superpowers, but we have seen condemnation coming from Ukraine, on Ukraine and other people. The world seems to be focused on Ukraine, but surely the people of Mogadishu who need blood who are crying for blood to be given to them, who are crying for help. Why have we kept quiet and never talked about the Somalia issue, put it on the high agenda to resolve the conflict? The departure of Americans from Baghdad, from Islamabad, no, the departure of Americans from Afghanistan, the hurried departure of Americans leaving the Taliban in control in Afghanistan meant that they had to find another place where they can actually make sure that they put their roots, the equipment, the tactics, and start making sure that they rout. We thought that their departure from Afghanistan would also help to give a focus on the Somali war so that they could end it for us. We are not saying they have not given the help, but the help that they have given to us Africans is not very good help that could wipe out the Al-Shabaab from Somalia. This is the topic. Why is it Somalia, is it fighting an enemy within? We can see the divisions in the government of Somalia, which led to a protracted war of elections, that the former president did not like elections to take place. Farmajo was in for a long haul to become a dictator, another one on African continent who hates elections. But the pressure from the United Nations, European Union, and America and other agencies that have helped Somalia forced Mr. Farmajo to abide by the regulations and hold a new, fresh election that saw him lose that election miserably. And it was a place was taken in by a new president, whom Miriam will tell us more details. But this new president changed the strategy of telling the people that if Al-Shabaab wants to talk, we are ready to talk. If they want to start talks, we are ready to talk to them. After 2 months to 3 months in power, the new president again changed the strategy. He said, since Al-Shabaab are not coming, we have to first also take up our responsibility as citizens to fight them. This tide has changed. That's why you see the narrative is changed. And therefore, Al-Shabaab also seems to have changed its tactics. And it is now fighting in the urban areas, killing thousands. The last killings was on 29th when they blew up a building and the hotels around Mogadishu, killing over 200 people and injuring many other people who are crying for medicine in hospitals that have no medicines in Mogadishu. Miriam, back to you in Nairobi for more details about the new president. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much about the new president. We know that President Mahmoud, he's really intensified the war against a renewed commitment against the fight against the Al-Shabaab, and I think by this his government has identified the importance of engaging the citizens as far as the fight against Al-Shabaab is concerned. So whether this new commitment is doing well and how far has it been able to achieve with this kind of approach, I think that is left out there for debate. But the United States on Tuesday issued sanctions targeting ISIL in Somalia, designating members of the group and others it accused of being involved in a terrorist weapons trafficking network in Eastern Africa. In a statement, the U.S. Department of the Treasury said several of the people designated in Tuesday's action have sold weapons to or were active Al-Shabaab members. The ISIL, which is an ISIS group, claimed responsibility for 2 car bombs that exploded outside the Education Ministry in Somalia's capital Mogadishu on Saturday, October 29th, killing at least 120 people in the deadliest blast since a truck bomb killed more than 500 people at the same location 5 years ago. Tuesday's action comes as Washington seeks to increase focus on exposing and disrupting terrorist financing networks in Africa, a senior Treasury official told reporters. While Tuesday's move is the first from the Treasury targeting ISIL in Somalia, the official said additional action is expected in the incoming days. So, Doc, even as we deliberate upon this topic that we're having right now, the enemy within. Yes, indeed, from what we see in this report and others that we've been looking at here for over periods of time, there are people in there that actually are working to fight against the government of Somalia and supplying them with and equipping them with these weapons that Somalia's government was saying, making it the war against Al-Shabaab very difficult because of the arms embargo that the country has, but Al-Shabaab are able to get these weapons that the government is not able to put their hands on.
Thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, lady and gentlemen, and those others watching us, why is the situation becoming unmanageable? So many years we have tried. African Union has pumped in quite a lot of information, a lot of soldiers. We have increased the number of soldiers on the ground. Why do you think Al-Shabaab is changing tactics and it cannot be defeated, wiped out? As we wipe out ISIS in Iraq, why have we taken all this time not to wipe up ISIS, Al-Shabaab in Somalia? These are the questions that linger my mind. Let's cross over to Harare in Zimbabwe.
All right.
What is your experience with rebels? Because you are near Mozambique, you know how rebels operate. Thank you.
Okay. The challenge that we have, we should not anticipate or expect a lot from the West whenever they are not benefiting anything. For the Iraq, ISIS in Iraq, they were fighting to loot oil in Syria. That's why they got involved. In Afghanistan, they're also getting natural gas. In Somalia, what's in it for them? You need to understand these guys, they want benefits. And it's incumbent upon us as Africans to come up with a solution to solve our own problems and not relying on these guys. Like we're saying, the Somalis guys have taken it upon themselves. The African Union, we should support them because they're relying on these big nations. Right now, they're concentrating on Ukraine. India with so many powder kegs, like the Korean Peninsula, there's something that is likely to happen. They would rather focus more on what affects them than what affects us, because they view us as second-class citizens. It's incumbent upon us to take the stance, to take our position and act on the Somalian situation. I understand 1991, when the Delta Force was defeated by Muhammad Said, but it was an African country, Zimbabwe, and we came and fought and restored peace. And we should go that same route. African countries come together, help the Somali situation. I submit. Thank you.
You have raised the point of profit diplomacy. Have you ever heard of a word called profit diplomacy? A diplomacy where people benefit. And you have talked of in Afghanistan, they were looking for in Iraq, they were looking for gas, oil. In Afghanistan, was it opium? I can see Afghanistan Talibans growing hectares, millions and millions of hectares for opium. And opium is one of the things that is not liked it is not a good thing that you can grow openly. Who buys this opium, Miriam? I don't know.
The poppy
Who buys it?
They know themselves, Doc, and yes, like you said, it is not a plant that can just be planted because it's used to make heroin, and it has a market, and we all know, and there are credible reports that even the Americans who were there at that time, they engaged so much in this trade, and a lot of their soldiers even became heroin addicts while they were in Afghanistan. So the story is very open-ended, but yeah, there is a market for it out there, and that's why it is a booming business in Afghanistan. The poppy plant, they call it that.
Tawish, thank you very much, Tawish. Miriam, Tawish, you have been following this story of Somalia, Al-Shabaab, the tactics. There is this democracy of the pastoral democracy? Is it part of the nature of, is it part of pastoral democracy that disturbs Somalia? Is it Somali nationalism that makes it difficult for Somalia not to have peace and not to overcome this point of Al-Shabaab? What do you think can be done to overcome the problem of Somalia, of Al-Shabaab in Somalia?
Thank you so much, Dr. David Masanga, and thank you, colleague panelists, and of course, all our viewers watching this program. Indeed, Dr. Masanga, the issue of the pastoral democracy in Somalia cannot be overemphasized. The fact that it's become more of, it's become one of the stumbling blocks and obstacles in the pursuit to ensure that Somalia is at peace and Somalia is has, realizes security that it has been yearning for all this time since the overthrow of Siad Barre in 1991. And Dr. Masanga, there's so much can be said about Somalia, and looking onto the tremendous strides it's made so far, because when you look into Somalia today, the same cannot be said of what it were or what defined Somalia, say, a couple of years ago. Ever since, of course, the incursion of the AMISOM and now ATMIS in Somalia to help flush out the insurgents in Somalia. And moving forward, Dr. Masanga, I think the story of Somalia has more been synonymous with, of course, violence, has been synonymous with terror attack, has been synonymous with lack of democracy, has been synonymous with the famine, a country which has been ravaged by drought, essentially so leading to a famine that has ravaged that particular country. But when you look into it generally, there appears to be steadfastness when it comes to now the leadership in Somalia to try and address some, if not all, of the challenges that it is facing as a nation, of course, with the support of the rest of the region. In dealing with this very major threat of extremism and terrorism in the name of the Al-Shabaab militia. And Dr. Masanga, you and myself, and of course the rest of the panelists will agree that indeed today we will reckon of successes that have been registered in Somalia. But for us to be able to realize the enormous achievement and successes, and even to be able to see that Somalia can be able to make quite a significant progress, then the effort to try and pacify Somalia must be sustained. More resources must be given to Somalia. More troops must still remain on the ground. We will need to see the training of the Somali army really to be able to take up the security challenge themselves. That is upon now the withdrawal of the ATMIS when their tenure comes to an end. But we will agree that some of the obstacles and the major challenges that Somalia today continues to face in realizing full stability and harmonious coexistence, even amongst its people, is that question that you have raised, Dr. Masanga, about pastoral democracy and the negative nationalism coming out from the Somali people themselves. Because if they were to discard that particular archaic kind of course, a nationhood, quote unquote, then we'll have seen quite some progress. And that is why today you see even some of the native Somalis in Somalia still view the soldiers who have gone there to help their fellow soldiers in Somalia really to deal with the Al-Shabaab militia as enemies of the Somali people. And I do not think that we can have all the military personnel being deployed by the African Union to Somalia to go and say destroy the livelihood of the people of Somalia, or even kill innocent civilians in Somalia. It is more about dealing and flushing out these militant groups in the name of the Al-Shabaab. And I think that is the ultimate objective that the ATMIS is engaging on at the moment. So for ATMIS even to be able to succeed, Dr. Masanga, when we will be making, of course, an audit of their performance by the end of the day, or when their tenure comes to an end, we'll want to see that there's more support coming not only from the military support, military personnel in Somalia, or even the government personnel, but more so on the ordinary citizenry in Somalia, because in itself, they are the ones who know perhaps the hideouts of the Al-Shabaab militants, that the ones who can be able to guide and help in terms of giving intel to those carrying out the operation. So there remains major obstacles in trying to stabilize Somalia, but we'll say so far there are significant progress that has been registered, and will want this to be sustained so that Somalia is at peace by the end of the day. Dr. Masanga, I submit.
Thank you very much. Miriam, let's look at another angle. ATMIS has sent new guidelines of departure, of exit from Somalia. The exit has mixed reactions from people. Do you exit the place and leave a place, a vacuum? And the Somalis ready to take on the insurgents, which is growing now in urban insurgents, that's coming back. Because what the terrorists are doing is they have withdrawn now from the rural areas because of the pressure from the natives who are saying it will be a man to man, a woman to woman, but we are not going to accept you to be operating in our territory. So the Al-Shabaab has shifted to main urban areas where they have now come to hit urban targets. Now, is it the time for us to exit? Is it time for us to start planning our exit? Is it what makes it difficult to identify the elements who sneak into the city? These elements are known by the people. These elements are known that they are operators. Why is it very difficult for people? The enemy within, the divisions within the security agencies of Somalia, the previous agencies, we had quite a lot of difficulties with the director of intelligence, who was actually not even spying for both countries of Somalia and Qatar. And you saw the divisions, what came up and led to two prime ministers haggling over power with the president. Is it that internal division, the enemy within, that is giving access to the other enemy, the other flank of Al-Shabaab, to come and attack Mogadishu? What is your view?
All right. Thank you, Doc, for that very important question. Perhaps just to start from where you traced your question from the mandate of ATMIS, I think it's different from that of AMISOM in the sense that ATMIS mandate is to ensure transition, to empower the Somali forces and security, and ensure that they allow for them to take charge of their country as far as security is concerned. And I think their mandate is very clear and ends in 2024. Now, the question if they will be able to have done that successfully, and the security forces in Somalia will be well equipped and well able to take care of their country, I think that is a different conversation that perhaps we shall have towards 2024. But that is their mandate, and that is where until the end of 2024, ATMIS is supposed to be leaving Somalia, but that is left to be seen how that will work out. Doc, we've had this conversation here numerous times, especially in the other government of Farmajo, and there were credible reports about even government officials, the National Intelligence Service, some elements in there trying to cooperate and work with Al-Shabaab. So it was even defeating the efforts of AMISOM. We saw Kenyan troops being targeted, let me say allegedly, but we've seen that. We've seen so many other cases in there because there were elements in the former government that were actually working and cooperating and even leaking intelligence information to Al-Shabaab, and that became detrimental and worked against every effort that was being made by players who were there trying to stabilize Somalia. And so we've seen how that has played out. But in this new government of President Mahmoud, there seems to be a renewed commitment, and he means business as far as fighting Al-Shabaab is concerned, and that is something that we must appreciate as stakeholders, as countries who have sacrificed. Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, our men and women in there in combat have been dying, and they've sacrificed their lives to stabilize this country, and everybody else out there who have been putting effort in trying to see a stable Somalia. So we have to appreciate the effort and the attitude of this new administration. So what they need now, as Tawish has already stated there, they need full support. They need funding. That will that they're showing, that is what we've been calling for. That is what we were demanding for from Farmajo that we could not get. But with Mahmoud, it's easier to come in when you see the will, when you see this government means business, the fight against Al-Shabaab. We can see that they really want to do it. So it's upon the rest of the world and the rest of the supporters who've been supporting this process to come in now, not to relent, and support this new government so that this war does not just become a money minting business and other things that have come up. Actually, we're able to defeat Al-Shabaab. So this government needs the support that it can get right now.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Let me pose the same question to Tawish, but change it add something. We see, is it becoming a proxy war, Miriam? It looks like there's a proxy, there's a country. There are countries that don't want Somalia to stabilize because these countries gain quite a lot from, if Somalia stabilizes, we shall begin taking out oil, we shall be selling oil, we shall be doing quite a number of things. Are there countries in the Middle East or in the Gulf, in the Red Sea enclave, the Horn of Africa? Of course, countries that have gone there like Uganda, Kenya, they have gone there to stabilize Somalia and go back home. But there seem to be long-term countries that know something that we don't know, that this place should never have peace. We have sophisticated equipment, we have drones. We saw countries like Turkey sending lethal drones in Ethiopia to kill Tigray. And Miriam, we would like to take this opportunity. I should have begun that by thanking the former president of the Republic of Kenya, my brother, the Pan-African brother, President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, former president of Kenya, the former president of Nigeria, and the former vice president, deputy president of South Africa, for having successfully, from our efforts on this platform, successfully got what we call a cessation of hostilities agreement. I am very delighted, man. I slept very comfortably last night, and I did not want to have any quarrels, simply because this is what I've been telling people.
Absolutely.
That as if we don't get a cessation of hostilities agreement, if the white smoke does not come out, and I want to take the opportunity to thank my Tigray friend, the leader of the delegation, the peace talks. Thank you, young man, for following my footsteps, that you are doing exactly. You have taken the mantle. Your speech encouraged me. And when I looked at him speak, I was very, very excited. I said, this is the man that we once shared conference halls of International Solidarity Conference in South Africa. We have been together, we have been great friends. He is now leading a country in negotiations. That is the spirit. He said we have given in, our people have died. We want to hold the cessation of hostilities agreement. Is there any time, Tawish, that South Africa, Somalia, will reach such a point where we say, we came, we saw, we conquered, we are going home? Tawish.
Thank you so much, Dr. Masanga. And I think you've aptly put it, Dr. Masanga, that the reason why we continue to have this fighting and lack of stability in Somalia is because of the external forces. And external forces in the sense that they have interest in Somalia. I have talked about the issue of petroleum, talk about the issue of gas, talk about the mining in generality, come to the fishing industry, and so many other dynamics, Dr. Masanga, which some of these nations really have interest in. And it will be in their interest really to see Somalia continue fighting amongst its own citizenry, being unstable, and the insecurity continue to ravage that nation, because when they are divided in such a manner, then it becomes very easy for them to exploit the resources in Somalia. So generally, it is in their interest really to see that fighting and the threat being posed by the Al-Shabaab militia continue to ravage that nation. You remember just the other day when we had that, of course, a tussle between Kenya and Somalia on the maritime dispute, and it came out clearly that there are nations which were hell-bent in spoiling the relationship that has all along been there between Somalia and Kenya, because they know the pivotal role that Somalia firstly plays in stabilizing Somalia. One, in having its troops, of course, in Somalia in the name of AMISOM, and now we have Artemis, which is trying to now make an exit strategy in Somalia, and also the continuous training of the Somali army. So these nations will really be so much interested, and they will support any initiatives that will see Somalia continue being in the situation that is it, or in the condition that it finds itself now, other than being stable, other than being at peace, other than enjoying the security. Because again, when they do, they will be able to now settle down together and concentrate on exploring the rich mineral resources that, of course, Somalia is blessed with. And itself, therefore, the people of Somalia will not have an opportunity to engage in the kind of conflicts and violence that we continue to witness today in that part of the African continent. So, Dr. Masanga, yes, I agree with you. There's an external hand that is also making it difficult for the Somalia to realize the peace that it has desired for far too long. And you ask yourself, how come that up to today, there's this question about the arms embargo, and you continue to have the Al-Shabaab militia really having the sophisticated weaponry, fighting the Artemis and fighting the Somali army in Somalia today. And yet we have really limited, or we've given a ceiling in terms of the purchase of arms for the Somali army. That in itself limits and makes it gives us a stumbling block for Somalia to realize this peace and security, Dr. Masanga. So yes, the external forces are hell-bent on exploiting the mineral resources in Somalia, not for the benefit of the Somali people, but for the benefit of the external forces. And just like you had alluded earlier on in your morning article, that do we have diplomatic profit in as far as the diplomacy we are expecting the African continent to run?
It is called profit diplomacy.
Profit diplomacy. Thank you, Dr. Masanga, for that correction. And if we could have the profit democracy in the African continent today, then we would have seen most of the mineral resources that the African continent and these nations are endowed with, benefiting our locals, benefiting the citizenry in our countries. But Dr. Masanga, because we have a few elites, people who have been compromised and who are in bed with these Western power countries who are exploiting our resources, it remains but just a pipe dream, Dr. Masanga, for these resources to be of benefit to our people. So it is still a long struggle. We are waiting to see by the end of the day when really Somalia will be able to realize the peace and security, and for the people to settle down and now begin building their country afresh. Dr. Masanga, I submit.
And Doc, I have something to add to just what Sabal Tawish has said there. And I think the question there that you asked, Tawish, the peace process, which I'm very happy about, that the mediation process that was ongoing in South Africa, and we've seen it's a good start. That was a good report, and I think as the people of this continent, and as the people who have been talking and making the most noise about what has been happening, I think that is a good step, and hopefully they can build on that to finally come to a place where the country is stable and everybody feels included and part of that great country that is Ethiopia. So your question was, will there a time that perhaps will come that we will see Somalia also having the same? And I think the situations are different when you compare the two. I don't know if they can even compare, because the TPLF and Ethiopian government, the conflict there was completely different until, the Ethiopian government decided to designate TPLF as a terrorist group, I think some times back. And so what the TPLF are fighting for is quite different from what Al-Shabaab is fighting for. Al-Shabaab is an ideological war. that has morphed to other things, but that is the basis of it. But for the TPLF, this is a group of people who are disgruntled, having been in power for a very long time. And I think after that, that big party that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed formed, and they didn't feel very well represented, they felt they were left out. So these are people who are disgruntled, and a couple of things that they did not like how the new leadership was doing. But in Somalia, Al-Shabaab, these are people who are willing to die for a cause they believe in, because they think when they fight in the process and die in the process of this fight that they're having, they will go straight to heaven. So them, it's different. So the approaches there must be different, as we have seen. And so hopefully there will be a time that they will be defeated, the Al-Shabaab will be defeated, and the few that would have remained can perhaps what Nigerians call repent and come back and see if they can build their own country. But I think it's difficult to draw parallels between the two conflicts in those two countries.
Miriam, as far as the peace process in Ethiopia was concerned, it was a straightforward peace process that was going to come.
Yes.
And you are right. I agree with you that there are just differences, very stark differences between the war in Ethiopia and because the one in Somalia has got external elements who are not actually themselves Somalis. These are ISIS that were collected from other places, and they came to have refuge. They passed. We saw them passing one country. One question one of our viewers has asked Mr. Ozias Mutudzi from Zimbabwe. He has asked one question. Who is arming Al-Shabaab? Who is arming Al-Shabaab? Where do the Al-Shabaab get their guns to come and kill the people of Somalia and East Africa?
And finally,
who gives them arms? Yes, and that's the question one of our viewers has asked from Zimbabwe. So let's look at the situation, the chronological events that worry me as an African is across the Red Sea, the uniform that you see Al-Shabaab wearing is the same uniform that is worn by armies of a country supported by America. Now, do they buy these uniforms in the market, a supermarket, open market? How do they bring these uniforms? There must be routes where these uniforms pass and the guns pass to reach the northeastern parts of Somalia. Another thing that worries me, Somaliland is peaceful. Not a single rebel, not a single terrorist has ever crossed there to do any harm to the people of Somaliland. And yet the fight, you can see the border is here and the fight is down there. Why? Why? What is this design? Then you see also the southern sector, all the way from the Kenyan border up to Kismayo, Eliwak, and so many. A few days ago, I saw on news they had kidnapped an ambulance and all the occupants, and they took them. That area, there is active elements of Al-Shabaab. Now, if we stick on who is funding this organization and arming them, we must point fingers to certain countries. Miriam, you remember, I don't know whether Stephen has got the clip yesterday that I talked very early in the morning before the peace process of Somalia came to a conclusion, or came, not the Somalia, of Ethiopia. If you have got that clip, Stephen, can you play for us? I want to hear, I want the public to hear, the world to hear what I had suggested. The one in blue. If you have got it, it is on your WhatsApp.
All right.
It is a very
they're working on it. Once it's ready, I think they will let us know.
It is very, very important, Miriam, for people to understand that some of the things, no, you have You have the brown one. Let me, Stephen, let me send you the blue one. You have the brown one. I will send you the blue one right now, which I spoke and pointed out who arms the people, how Eritrea has become a stumbling block to the peace process. And I was right. That same evening, the House of Commons in London discussed the House of Commons in London also discussed the same problem of the peace process, why the Eritrean conflict is becoming sharper and nobody is bothering at all. So these are some of the things that we need to highlight and bring out to the public. Why is this going on while people are simply sitting and watching? Because you end the war, you need a serious call out for the people funding the war. It is there now, Stephen. To end that war, you need to call out, how do they get uniforms? How do they get the guns? The question raised by one of our viewers from Zimbabwe is very crucial to understanding the logistics, how complicated the network is, that they have come now in the capital city, in Mogadishu. They sleep, they eat in the same hotels, and then tomorrow morning, they blow up the hotel. Actually, is there a government? Does the government have a network? Are these people the ones that you can surrender? Let's say surrender the whole unit and say we have gone away. Etimis is going away. We have left everything in your hands. Miriam, what will be the hell there? I always keep on saying, in Africa, we are already in hell. We shouldn't even think of going to any other hell, because we are already in hell in some of the places on the African continent. We don't need to go to hell again. We are already there. Because look, what would happen to this if Artemis, the Artemis leaves and leaves a vacuum, leaves this power to these guys who cannot even control. No, we through the intelligence, intercept these guys before they go and do the job. If you are ready, you can tell me. Stephen, I've sent the thing to you.
Yeah, it's ready now. I'm being told it's ready.
Okay, Thank you very much. Let's listen to it, and we come back to conclude.
Aldrin St-Pierre on Beyond the Headline.
It's now 22 minutes after 3 o'clock, and we now focus on the Tigray-Ethiopia conversations or dialogues that are taking place. Peace talks between the warring sides on Ethiopia's Tigray conflict have been extended into this week. The dialogue is aimed at finding a lasting ceasefire and making both sides agree to the reactivation of basic services. All sides in the conflict have been accused of abuses, with the death toll believed to be in the hundreds of thousands and millions more displaced. While we understand that negotiations are extremely difficult, but why are we not hearing something positive coming out of these talks? Dr. David Matsanga, who's a political analyst and also expert on the East Africa diplomatic relations, now joining us on the line. Dr. Matsanga, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us. Do you think that the reconfiguration of the mediators will yield a positive result, and also taking into consideration that these dialogues are happening right here in South Africa?
First of all, thank you very much, listeners across the continent of Africa and the world, and in South Africa in particular. First, it is a very good sign that the talks have been extended, and the reconfiguration, as you say, of the mediators brings in a new hope, a new ray of solving this problem. But the biggest problem still lies in the parties. If there is no cessation of hostilities, we need a permanent ceasefire, which can allow the parties to deliver food on both sides. We need a ceasefire that will enable the people to go in to help those who are starving, those who are sick, those who want to be evacuated. So the first breakthrough of any peace talks should be, have we got the ceasefire, that there will be no return to any armed struggle again while the peace talks are taking place.
And in the absence of that ceasefire, do you think that it makes the dialogue even more difficult? Because with the ceasefire as well, there would be some, what do they call it again? There'll be some trade-offs that need to be exchanged as well.
Yes, and in the absence of a permanent ceasefire, a cessation of hostilities agreement must be signed by parties. And two, another factor that is very, very disturbing, which I can see on both sides, there are external influence, external interference from countries that are key players. It is now being used as a proxy war. Until you call out Eritrea, and I've been very candid, I have not reserved my words, I have not been intimidated. I have to say the truth. Until you call out all these nations on both sides that are arming both sides, especially Eritrea, which is in the territory of Ethiopia. It has come in the territory and it is fighting on the Ethiopian soil. And also on the other side, we must have Egypt and other countries that are supporting the other side of Tigray. So we must be very, very candid, and if we're Africans and we want to solve this problem, we must come out. And I believe the mediators are going to do the same, to call out these countries that are supporting and making it difficult for a cessation of hostilities agreement to be made. Without that coming out, the white smoke, which we usually see at the Vatican, if we don't see that white smoke of a cessation of hostilities agreement, then we know there is still a long way to go.
So what do you think then is standing in the way of Eritrea as well as Ethiopia finding a lasting solution, also taking into consideration that the former emperor Haile Selassie also failed when it came to that agreement that was signed with the backing of the United Nations?
First of all, Ethiopia has been stable. It was a stable country, just as Yugoslavia was stable, just as after the Second World War and the partitioning of Africa, Ethiopia remained the only country in Africa that was not colonized. And those countries and the balkanization of the state of Ethiopia brought peace, a peaceful coexistence of Ethiopia. That's why our headquarters of African Union was selected to be in Addis Ababa, because it was one of the most peaceful countries on the continent of Africa at that time. Now, after the death of Emperor Haile Selassie and the coming of Mengistu Haile Mariam, and then Ethiopia started to show signs. Isaias Afwerki, Zenawi, we are together, all of us in London with them. We didn't know the differences that they had between Eritrea and Ethiopia and the Tigray. These two people have actually made it. When Zenawi died, Isaias started making actually a lot of attempts to go and hit the Tigrayan people. What brought up a problem? The current prime minister comes to go and shake hands, make peace with Isaias Afwerki at the expense of not knowing the historical difficulties that Ethiopia had gone through. And he got a Nobel Prize as a shared Nobel Prize, which is a very, very dangerous move. And the war started 2 years ago. I warned the public, I warned the people of East Africa, I warned the people of Africa that shaking hands with Isaias Afwerki, who is against the Tigrayan people, right from time memorial, will bring a war in Ethiopia. My words did not go. It came out, it burst out, and I hope the mediators will understand this background and make it possible for the people of Ethiopia to regain their dignity and work together as one country.
Yeah, just a quick one, Dr. Matsanga. Have you heard as yet how long these peace talks will continue for?
They have to continue, and if they come out without a cessation of hostilities, and I want your viewers and the listeners across the continent of Africa and South Africa, we encourage the mediators now, not tomorrow, now, to get a cessation of hostilities agreement, to get it working so that hostilities stop and the food, medicine, and other shelter, water is delivered to the people. As you know, the East African region is, and the Horn of Africa has fallen under the drought spell, and the animals are dying, people are dying, they need help. Okay. And if that corridor is not open, then we can't say we have made a breakthrough until we see the cessation of hostilities agreement signed, which might be any time, maybe tomorrow or the other day, then we can now breathe a sign of relief and say, here we are, the white smoke has arrived.
Dr. David Matsanga, the political analyst and also expert on the East Africa diplomatic relations. Those negotiations, which are currently underway here in South Africa, were expected to be from the 25th up until the 30th of October. That expected.
Thank you very much. You have all listened to that analysis. You have seen what it is. I've made my points very early before the peace process. I predicted that there was going to be a white smoke coming. And thank you very much for that, President Uhuru Kenyatta, Obasanjo, and the South African former Deputy President. Thank you for the role that you have played. And thank you very much, all of you, for all these efforts in bringing about peace in Africa. Thank you very much. God bless you. Back to Somalia as we wind up. Let's look at an exit strategy. What can we do? Are these forces going to stay there forever, Miriam, as we part, as our parting shore, and Tawish likewise?
Like I said, the mandate of ATMIS right now ends in 2024, the end of 2024, unless there will be a need for an extension, but that was the agreement. They're supposed to allow for transition for the security forces to take charge of their country. But I think it's a bit too early to see, because maybe by next year we would have seen the progress that would have been made as far as empowering the security forces in Somalia. But I think as it stands right now, they're supposed to be exiting at the end of 2024. So maybe we wait until we get closer to that, God willing.
Well, thank you so much, Miriam. What I would want to register is that, albeit the drawbacks and shortfalls that the operation in terms of the incursion into Somalia by, say, AMISOM has been, we can say that there's been a lot of success that has been registered so far. There's some semblance of normalcy and security and peace being restored in Somalia. But looking into some of the challenges, of course, when you look into some of the attacks that we continue to experience today in Somalia, that in itself should not dampen the spirit of those who are carrying out the operation in Somalia. I think, like I've said in the past, it should only but serve to bolster the morale of our soldiers who are on the ground trying to really try to draw the exit strategy. Like Dr. Matsanga has asked, are we going to have our forces stay there forever? I do not think so. But again, we must only exit when it is absolutely necessary and when we know and understand and acknowledge that the situation in Somalia has been contained and the Somali army is up to the task and can rise to the occasion to be able to deal with its security issues without the involvement of other nations for that matter. But Dr. Matsanga, as I finally submit on this, I think it is also important for us to underscore the fact that for Somalia to be able to realize its full potential, we must call out the involvement of the external forces who are hell-bent in destabilizing Somalia and making it difficult for it to be able to realize the peace and security that it's been pursuing. We must also be able to realize that for Somalia to be able to get back to its footing, all of the East African region and all of the African continent must support the initiatives that are that are therein, including those from the United Nations Security Council, to make sure that we are able to flush out the Al-Shabaab militants in Somalia, and the people of Somalia can be able to get back to work, including those who ran out and now being hosted in other countries as refugees. A case in point in the Dadaab and Kakuma camps here in Kenya, but they are able to go back and reunite with their families and their kins in Somalia and together build their nation. If that cannot be realized, if that has not been realized, I think the pacification of Somalia and making sure that this nation is at peace still will remain a pipe dream, because today we cannot just call in terms of the timelines that Artemis has to exit Somalia. The most important thing is, will we have achieved the ultimate objective of making sure that Somalia is at peace and security has been normalized in Somalia? If that has been realized, then I think there will be the exit strategy must then be implemented as it has been planned. Dr. Masanga and Miriam, I do submit.
Very well. Thank you so much. Doc, you can end it now.
Thank you very much. We have done our best. We have highlighted out the obstacles. The new narrative is that the government in Somalia has brought in a strategy of making sure that it encourages the locals to start taking up arms. Is it harmful? What can be done? Let me do a takeaway on this. From 1991 to date, Somalia has been under the spell of war. It has been called a pariah state. A pariah state in the sense that several armies have come, several terrorists have come from different parts of the world, entered Somalia, made it difficult for any administration to work and change the tides of war and bring about peace. The peace in Somalia has been elusive, just as the terrorists themselves have been elusive. The African Union has done its best by sending in troops. Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Djibouti, Burundi have done their best. Uganda was the first country, and I salute the heads of state for those countries that sent in troops to make sure that the terrorists are removed from the country and the country returns to peace. But efforts, and little efforts, have been made by the international community to put pressure on the terrorists, to give equipment, to give manpower to the people that are fighting terrorism in Somalia. We need that manpower. We need the same strength as the strength that is being asked on Ukraine. Why are we being asked to support the Ukrainian war when we really have a war in Africa that has not ended since 1991? The questions are very clear. Why is Ukraine a priority and Somalia is not a priority? Is Somalia playing a proxy war? Is there a proxy war? Are there countries that don't want to see Somalia liberated? Are there countries that don't want Somalia to have peace? Are there countries that are interested in the economic, the profit democracy, that diplomacy that we see? That every country in the world goes for profit diplomacy. We have seen this happen in the Congo. We have seen this happen in Libya. We have seen this happen in Central African Republic, where profit diplomacy is used. Has Africa lacked its zeal? Has Africa been there, stood and watched its resources taken? And in the end, they receive wars, conflicts, hunger, and other things that come along with poverty. The continent of Africa and the people of Africa need to stand up and support the people of Somalia in their quest for freedom and total peace. That freedom must come from the Somali people. The Somali people themselves must stand up and wake up and start pointing out the hideouts of these terrorists. Indeed, terrorists cannot operate from planet Venus. They don't come up from planet Venus or Moon or Mercury and drop to kill. They are among the people, the citizens. They are among the people of Mogadishu. Time has come for them to report to the authorities. The people who are suspicious, who are coming to kill people in hundreds. The recent bomb that killed over 200 people and many injured is something that we must not leave uncondemned. The world must condemn these various acts that still keep this Horn of Africa country at war with itself, with the neighbors, and the international community. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all we have. That's our takeaway from Punchline Africa Television. We believe that one day, and one day alone, Somalia will rise from the ashes and shine again. Thank you very much for listening. God bless.